He's about to grace our screens as the host of the show Mob Talks and has recently been signed by an agency that provides speakers from multicultural and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander backgrounds. Who is he? He's Marcellus Enalanga and he's here. Hi Marcellus.
Hi Malcolm, thank you for having me on the show.
It's a great pleasure. Marcellus, first of all, let's start off where you started off. Which was where?
Yes, so I was born in Alice Springs, Northern Territory. I grew up there for the first 5 years, and then I moved down to South Australia where my mum and her sisters wanted to come down to provide a good opportunity for their children to succeed.
So it was all about you,
yeah,
so to speak.
Pretty much.
It's amazing how parents always do that, really. They look for the better options for their kids than what they had. Was that sort of the motive?
Of course, and growing up in the Northern Territory, especially in the remote community, the environment wasn't good. We needed a different change, a seaside, different change of scenery, and the opportunity.
Sea change, not a lot of sea at Alice Springs.
No, just desert, plain desert.
When you say not a lot of opportunity, you mean in what areas?
Academic, sports, and I'm lucky that I've achieved so much since being down here in South Australia.
Right. Well, that's a good thing. I was about to say because it would be not so cold, not so hot, but Alice Springs gets really cold, doesn't it?
Yeah, during the winter
Yes.
it freezes.
Not everybody realises that. They think of Alice being, a really hot place to be.
Yeah, that's true, because during the winter it gets down to -1 or -2 degrees, which is very cold.
Yes, exactly. So what group are you from? What family group are you from?
Yes, so my language group, I am Western Aranda, Warlpiri and Pitjantjatjara, so that's basically the Central Desert.
It's sort of a mixture of all the different groups in that area, or lands in that area. Sometimes it's difficult for us to understand what to call the different, I'm saying family groups, because I guess that's how it all began, but
of course.
Different nations, because to us we're all the same nation, but we're a nation of nations now that we're just starting to understand.
Of course, yeah. Within Australia there's Aboriginal nations and countries, and we're a multicultural nation within our
nations.
Yeah, within our own culture.
It does get a bit confusing,
It
but
is.
I get it. When did you become aware that you were part of a nation? Is that an odd question to ask? Because I often think, at what point in our life do we realise we belong to a group of people?
Well, when I was younger, I thought I just belonged in the desert. As a child, didn't know anything or the differences between a nation, a group, or a language group. I didn't know anything about that. As a child, I just grew up being a child. So
how wonderful to be a child.
Yeah.
Before the politics start.
That's
I guess. And then you ended up in politics. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so tracking your journey. So your mum brings you to South Australia, down to Adelaide. And what was the first thing that you sort of clung on to say, oh, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Port Pirie, just north of Adelaide.
Yep.
I was interested in singing and sports. I did a bit of choir. I sang in the choir when I was in primary school, and and as a kid growing up in primary school, I was very shy, and I think singing gave me that confidence and strength to be who I am.
It does for a lot of people, actually. That's an interesting point to make.
Yeah, of course, and then
and it's such a natural thing to do, which a lot of people don't sort of realise. Singing is such if you can talk, you can sing.
Yeah, I come from a line of storytellers and singers
who sing. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point. Are most of the stories handed down through song, or is it spoken word?
Both. So in our culture, the story we call it song lines. So when we talk about the landscapes and describing and telling stories about our creations, they use song. through that storytelling, and that's been going on for thousands of years.
Okay. I should probably pause there in the sense of saying, as white Australians, for a better expression, I guess we're finding it difficult now to connect properly with the first Australians because we don't really understand why the history stories of creation and so on are coming into today's generation of conversation. Probably the same as, for example, biblical stories of the Jewish and Hebrew nation have been handed down into sort of our culture, I guess, because now we know that the planet is round and the Earth isn't flat and there's a lot more planets and solar systems out there, and we know how things work. What's the value, do you think, to your families and your nation by retelling these old stories of creation that we know aren't true, but we know were an explanation as to why things existed? That was a very long question. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I totally understand.
But you know what I'm
question.
saying, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more about identity and knowing where we come from and knowing who I am as an individual. Because if I didn't have those stories to tell, all, you know, that history, then I would not know who I am. And like I said, it's more about the identity.
Would you equate that to sort of like the fairy tales or the stories that we know as a white culture, do you think? Is it
I think
parallel or?
No, I think they're all the same stories, but they're all translated differently.
Okay.
I personally say, for example, you know, the Bible, you know, for the different religions, they're all told and translated different. But they're the same stories.
Yeah, mostly they're stories to try and help people understand a better way to live. Like the Ten Commandments, we're really trying to give an example of a better way to live. Is there an equivalent in your nation background?
Well, we do have laws, so Lore. So that's basically the law.
Thank you for spelling that.
Yeah, so it's a different...
different understanding
principles
of a word.
and values that we have to... You know, we have to go through and understand.
But that's the origin of the values. That's
Of
what
course.
you're saying, isn't it? Really, understanding the origin of the value helps you to understand the value today.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Getting off that now, back to you, back to you, back to you. So you're in Port Pirie and you're at school and you're continuing with your studies and you think, oh, I think I'll move in this direction next. What was it?
Yeah, so I wanted to experience working in the public sector. So I've worked in government and in politics. So at a very young age, I was on multiple boards and committees as a youth representative, which is great because that gave me an understanding of governance and how government works. So yeah.
Did you find that frustrating? Sort of new coming into something that's got so many old rules.
Of course, especially trying to get my voice and opinions heard, because as a young person, I went in with new ideas to the table and I wanted to make changes there and then, but unfortunately there's a lot of processes and there's time.
It's all the checks and balances.
Of course.
And of course that's what's happening at the moment with the statement from the heart and the government looking at making a proper voice in government, in Parliament.
Of course, yeah.
Where do you think that's going? Can you explain from your perspective why you think that's valuable?
I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done around that, both for First Nations people and non-First Nations people, so that we have a better understanding of the whole process and how will it affect not only First Nations people, but the wider Australia in general, especially if there is that voice to Parliament. I think there needs to be more education around that. But I think I've seen a lot of politicians going around and getting the support they need to put this on the table for a referendum.
To get this to happen. It's interesting to me because Australia has become such a multicultural society. In fact, we've got people from literally everywhere. It's when the melting pot is going to sort of blend together, I guess, and we all just become Australians in the end. So really we need representation from everywhere.
Of course, and I think, you know, the new parliament that was elected recently has more representation of diverse backgrounds.
Very much so. There are
and
Asian
religious
people.
backgrounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost up to our time in this first segment, and what I really want to talk to you about is the new program that you're hosting and a television career that's starting off for you, but you'll have to wait and come back in a tick to find out about that and a lot more about Marcellus in just a moment. Our guest is Marcellus Enalanga, and we're talking about the fact that you are about to host your own TV program. How did this come about?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty new to the television and film industry. I've just recently completed my certificate in Cert 4, in Screen and Media, and
Okay.
I wanted to get into this industry because
It's all right to complete something, but yeah, you've got to have a tenacity then to make it happen.
And just having a bit of an understanding of how things work in this industry as well. And I worked on a couple of productions behind the scenes, but this is the first time hosting a talk show, which I'm really excited about.
And we talked with a couple of the producers and writer a little while ago, but you weren't available. Did you have COVID at the time, or were you?
I think so.
Yeah. Hits everybody. It doesn't care who. So the program came about really basically talking about mostly the Kaurna people of the land here around Adelaide. And I think the plan is to go on to do more episodes and broaden that information. For you, how daunting was it to suddenly be in front of a camera?
Well, I'm used to being in front of the camera because I've done a bit of news reporting. I did some piece to camera. So I'm pretty used to being in front of the camera. But to host a talk show was very daunting. But I was lucky because it was pre-recorded, so I get to, there were mistakes and I get to
so you go back and patch it up, so to speak. Yes, I understand. Yeah. There's something about live television though that's wonderful really, because it's exactly what happened right there. The reactions are natural. We all understand this is a real conversation like ours. It's a conversation between two people and it's not going to be edited after the event.
Of course.
So whatever you say is what's going to happen. That sort of live television, you basically have to think on two levels because you're still aware of what's happening in the studio, but you've also got to be very aware of who you're talking to or what the what the subject matter is and so on. But the subject matter was what? What were you really
so we had 4 episodes. So we spoke about the health issues, and obviously that's a big issues surrounding the First Nations people and our community. We also talked about being black within the LGBTQI plus community. We also talk about identity and who we are as Aboriginal people, especially for someone that has other backgrounds as well, other than Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander backgrounds. We also talked about teaching the Aboriginal language and culture within workplaces and schools.
Right. Well, you talked about it. Why don't we show a quick clip from the show, and that will give everybody an understanding of what it is we're actually talking about. So here it is.
Wada, and welcome to Mob Talks.
How do you amplify First Nations perspectives in your world? It doesn't have to be at a political stage, it can be at every human level.
We want a voice to Parliament. We want to be able to say, if any policy affects us, how do we get in on it?
LGBTIQ, and then you put gay on top of that, and then you put trans, but then on top of that you have Aboriginal.
For me, it doesn't matter how light my skin is. I know country recognises me.
Well, we certainly hope that there's more episodes of this program made, because I think it's the benefit of everybody. sometimes it's difficult to understand the stance of the black community, for want of a better expression, and that's one of the hard things also for us to come to terms with. Originally it was Aboriginal, meaning first people, on the land, so to speak, and now we're saying First Nation. What's the difference?
Yeah, well, it was Aborigines, Aboriginal, Indigenous, and now First Nations. I think we are more identifying that we are the first people of this continent, but also we are First Nations, and there are multiple nations within this massive continent that we...
Well, I had no idea of that until only recently, until I guess there was a lot more talk, and I suppose people becoming upset, First Nation people becoming upset because we didn't know that, but it was hidden in a way from us as well, I think.
I think in general we would introduce ourselves as, so I would say I'm an Aranda person, so if I was talking to someone about the Aranda people, I would be like, so, we as Aranda people, we don't agree or disagree, for example. And I'll talk about Indigenous as well, because that's the name that we're given to us by the government, and we don't feel like we're connected to being called Indigenous.
No, it's like this joke I have with everyone who says I want to go to the bathroom, and I say we don't have a bath in there. It's calling a place the right name. If you want to go to the toilet, go to the toilet. Why are we saying bathroom when there's no bath there? So using that as a parallel, is that sort of the sense of it?
That's a good example.
So what should we really call everybody? I suppose that's the question, isn't it?
What's
it's
the not for me to answer as well, because I'm comfortable being called a First Nations person, but I'm more comfortable being called an Aranda, Pinjarra or Warlpiri person. But obviously that's a mouthful. But I think, just to cover us in general.
What's wrong with an acronym? Now, come on, you can be, say that again, you can be a what?
An Aranda.
That's A.
Warlpiri.
W.
And Pinjarra.
P. AWP. Solved it.
Yeah.
Solved it. Let's move on. Oh, terrible. So where do you want to go in your life?
Well,
now that you've started to, jump quite a few hurdles to get to this point, and you're still a very young man.
Of course. So my goal is to become to go on mainstream TV and to put, more diverse faces, especially black faces, on mainstream television, and that's, I think that's where I want to go to.
So, on the percentage ratio of First Nation people, I suppose the percentage ratio of people who have come from other countries and so on, do you think it would be wise to have representation with, like the ABC has already started to do this, and have people from all nations, all around the world, representing them in their news reports and so on? Do you think that's a good thing for the country?
I think, representation does matter. For that young, skinny black kid that I grew up in a remote community, the only person that I seen was Ernie Dingo. And, he travelled around with Great Outdoors and presenting, and, by looking at him, I was like, wow, that's what I want to do, because if that man can do it, if that black Aboriginal First Nations man can do it, then I can do it. And,
well, he has actually had a huge influence on the whole community, hasn't he? I mean, it's probably underestimated the input he's had into TV programs just to be accepted as Ernie Dingo, not as a black man, an Aboriginal, a First Nation person.
Of course.
It's just Ernie.
Of course.
That's really where we need to get, isn't it? Because I said to you when we first met, I don't really see colour. And I said that, when we chatted, I'd be a bit protagonistic so that you could explain from your perspective how you feel. Because I don't know that we're hearing enough from your perspective across the board with everybody, really.
That's true.
Including people of my age who are often not included in television. I'm very lucky to be this age and still appearing on screens, and I'm really grateful for that. But like you said, how many older people are seeing older people on the screen? How many younger people, how many black people, how many Asian people, and so on.
But I think when it comes to this industry, we are more inclusive. There's inclusivity. Well, I can't pronounce the word.
Yeah, it's all right. Borrow my tea.
People of diverse background, and you look back 20 to 30 years ago. Most of the presenters were,
they were white
people.
Yeah. But it's hard. Well, for me, in my brain, it's hard to keep thinking, oh, they're white, they're brown, they're black, because I think the sooner we just start relating to people, as humans, and I wonder if we put up barriers trying too hard to make a point.
But I think that's a conversation for us as a nation, as a country, to talk about. And I know,
good. I'm glad
another.
It's everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, another topic that we'll maybe touch on is racism as well, and that's huge.
Yes. Well, I can't say that I've ever seen that because I'm white, but have you?
I have. I've experienced a lot, especially on the field, within sports, workplaces.
Why is that? Because they're trying to put you off your game, do you think?
I think so.
Is it malicious because you're black, or is it malicious to put you off your game?
It's also that systemic racism that I have to, go through and endure.
Frustrating, isn't it?
It is.
Why can't we all just be friends?
That's true.
Okay, so with the program, I know there's discussion about making more episodes of Mob Talks, and I know that it's got to have the S at the end, otherwise it's about an Italian mafia family.
Yeah.
That we can't talk about. There's a little bit more to talk about, and we'll do exactly that in just a tick when we come back and talk with Marcellus. Marcellus Enalanga is our special guest. Marcellus, you want to be a TV host, and you're already doing that in just 4 episodes with the plan of doing more. But there's a camera over there. Talk to the camera and tell prospective producers why they should employ you.
Well, I'd love to be on TV because representation does matter, and I want to put more people of colour on TV.
There you go. There's your audition time. Sorry, but that big smile should be there too, I think. Marcellus, thank you for doing this program. We met only recently. It's unfortunate we didn't have the chance to talk before about the program, but knowing it's coming up in the next few weeks is important for people to know, right here on community television, both here in South Australia, in Adelaide, and in Melbourne, on Channel 31 in Melbourne. And also, I'm assuming it's going to go up on CTV Plus, which is the new platform that people will be able to see you right around the world.
Of course.
Exciting, isn't it?
Of course, I'm so excited.
It is a new era in television now, particularly this type of television, and particularly in television like this, long-form interviews where you really get to know somebody and what they think about something. And thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And
no worries, thank you.
Good luck for the future. So thanks again. So until next time on Our Time, it's been lovely to have your company too. So keep yourself nice until next time we meet. Bye.